Breakfast. It's Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson.
Blue Cruise, Matthew Dickerson. Ford are going to roll out Blue Cruise alternative to Tesla's Autopilot. Now, you've just been a smart A and Googled up what I'm about to ask you. Allowing owners of its latest cars to drive hands-free in limited circumstances, but Australian drivers will have to wait to access this thing, which is initially limited to US and Canada. It only works if what Ford describes as carefully selected, pre-qualified sections of divided highways called hands-free blue zones.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah. What does it mean, though, Blue Cruise?
Well, this is their, obviously someone in the marketing team
it's a little gimmick.
Yeah, that's right. Let's come up with some way of capturing the imagination of people out there. And really it's just, as many other manufacturers are doing now, a way for a car to be driving itself, a way for a car to be getting to that point. We're not there yet, but fully autonomous.
We're a long way from sitting in the back seat.
We are a long way from doing that. The cars at the moment that people can buy and use, there's testing going on, but people that can buy a car, you can go along, as that press release said, you can go along certain parts of roads, and you can do that now. They don't have to be blue zones, but if you've got good markings on the road and the road's nice and in nice condition, a motorway, for example, the sort of autonomous driving we've got now works really well.
We're putting more and more onus on EV, what shall I say, brain power, aren't we? I'm driving on a country road outside of Walgett, okay?
Yep.
It's pouring rain. I'm in my EV. There's no lines on the road, very minimal tar, lightning and thunder, very, very frightening. I come across a railway crossing, which is inevitable in the country. How does an EV handle that kind of atmosphere?
So don't confuse two things here. We're talking about autonomous driving, and you're talking about EVs. They don't necessarily go hand in hand.
They're separate.
So autonomous driving you can get on petrol cars and on EVs. Autonomous driving doesn't have to go on EVs.
Situation. I'm in your Tesla.
Yep.
How will it handle it?
So at the moment, if you go along and you don't have good line markings, then it's not going to handle it at all.
So I go all over the place, or what?
No, it'll just stop. It'll turn off the automatic driving, and it will bring you to a halt because it just can't continue on not having any idea where it's going.
Well, that's useless to me.
It is.
I just spent 60 grand on a car, and I'm not going anywhere.
Well, and that's the thing. On good roads, they're great, but when you don't have the roads aren't as good, and we have roads around this region that aren't quite as good.
Maybe we have a bit of rain, and we can't go on Warren Road, so.
That's right. So, and on a good road, rain is okay. So I've tested some of the self-driving features in my cars, and you can go along and it can be raining. Again, if humans can see, then the cameras around the car can see. And that's the important part. If the rain was so heavy that we shouldn't be driving, that we can't see, that it's just ridiculous, then no, the EV or the autonomous driving component probably is not going to work that well. But it's relying on cameras to see parts of the road, the lines on the road, to work out what's going on. Some people think it's just relying on GPS, but GPS is just not quite accurate enough. And also,
tell me, I know stories of people ended up in ponds down dead end roads.
Yeah, so that's not quite accurate enough, but also the response time for it to be able to work out where it is on the road in relation to where it should be and what the road looks like. Whereas with the cameras on cars, it's looking for the white lines, it's looking for good line markings. You can go along a road. There was an example just recently, down the end of Macquarie Street, they were doing some road work. So I went there for a test.
And?
Good white line markings along the road.
But the lines are all over the shop.
Well, no, those were okay, but it was where they were doing the road work, so it was completely black tar, no line markings had been put on there. So I drove along, put in self-driving mode, had my hands on the steering wheel, of course, and then when it got to that section, it started beeping to let me know that there was a problem, and then started slowing me down and bringing me to a halt in a straight line because it didn't know what was happening. It couldn't find where the road was. So in other words, rather than just continuing on blindly and ending up down a ditch, it just brought me to a halt. Not a sudden halt, it just brought me to a slow halt and put lots of alarms off. So I did fall asleep, for example, it was going to wake me up.
Okay, so you took over.
Well, I had my hand on the steering wheel, so I just kept driving.
Right. And what about an automated, fully automatic car?
Fully autonomous. These are the sort of problems I've got to solve.
That's it.
And it was interesting. I talked to a friend of mine recently, or it was before the pandemic, who went to a roads conference. And one of the things they talked about there was line markings. A really big topic was line markings
Yeah.
because they've got to be spot on for all of these autonomous vehicles that will be with us in the next 5 or 10 years. So fantastic to have these great line markings on a motorway, but we don't all drive on a motorway every day. So you go to the back of Walgett, as you gave in your example, you're on all sorts of roads in this region, then some of those aren't going to be fantastic for autonomous driving.
What happens if a mob of roos jump in front of the car?
Yeah, interesting. This is one of the great challenges for all of the vehicle manufacturers. They've been able to solve problems for cows and for moose and for deer, but kangaroos are a real problem for them because kangaroos are seen and then they hop up and they're not seen and then they go down.
Now you see me, now you don't.
That's
No,
exactly
that's how
right.
the camera looks at it.
So they've
Yeah.
actually got to the point where they're trying to build specific software algorithms for kangaroos, trying to get some examples of where kangaroos look at their bouncing process and then make sure that a car, because we as humans, we know what that stupid kangaroo is going to do. It's going to turn at 90 degrees at any point in
It does
time.
whatever it wants. They're idiots.
So we know that that'll jump sideways, it'll do all sorts of crazy things. They've got to work out some algorithms. But again, the problem is, in the overall market worldwide, Australia's a very small part of it, and other countries don't have these problems with kangaroos. So the amount of manpower or brain power they're putting towards this problem is lower at the moment, just because we don't have such a big market in Australia.
How do electric vehicles, your car, how does your Tesla handle merging lanes?
If you want to do it automatically,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's one of the features that is now available in some EVs, and Tesla's one of them, where you can actually just touch your blinker and it will automatically merge lanes. It'll check out the road around
Does
you,
it check up traffic?
checks all the traffic around
So
you.
does that mean it's got cameras along the side of the vehicle as well?
Some of the cars now have got, I think, up to 11 cameras around them. So they have got cameras on the sides, in the front, in the back, multiple cameras all the way
Are
around.
they visible on your dashboard?
You can make them, yeah, you can see them. I actually, if you use more than my rear view mirror, I use my actual in-screen camera that looks out the back, especially in Sydney traffic, because it gives you a much wider angle of the lanes behind you. So if I look at my rear view mirror, I can see typically one lane. Look on my screen, I can see 3 lanes across. So it's actually quite handy.
So, you're slowing down in traffic because the car tells you to?
Again, it depends whether you're in autonomous
If you're
mode.
in traffic jam in Parramatta Road.
Yeah. If you were in autonomous mode, it would slow you down because it's got a laser on the front of the car as well that checks out how far behind the car you are in front of you, and then it will make sure it keeps that distance. If you start getting too close and you're still driving and you're not slowing down, it will then start to put some alarms on and actually will help you brake if you get to that point where where it's almost inevitable you're going to have a crash.
When does it pick up?
In terms of when does it start?
Start to speed up again, or is that in your control?
No, if the car in front of you then moves out of the road, it will start to pick up. It'll see street signs. So if you go along in a 110 zone and you go back to an 80 zone,
It'll read that.
it'll read that. It'll slow you down for that. And then if you leave it in autonomous mode, as you go through that slower zone, it'll then pick up when it sees the next sign to go to 110.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of things spring into mind, Matty Dickinson. I want to know about driving instructors. What's going to happen to them?
Well, I had a funny conversation with my son a couple of years ago. My son's 19, and when he was doing his L's, he obviously, when he turned 16, he started doing his L's, and he wasn't as keen as I was. I mean, I could hardly wait to I didn't have to get my hours
It's
up. But
liberation,
it
man.
was, yeah. The
Yeah.
day you turned 17 was the day you went in and got that license. And I said, you're not that keen? He said, I think I'll need a license. Will we be driving cars in the future? And I went, probably a little while yet. I'd still get the license. I think it's probably worthwhile still.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting point, that in maybe 20 years' time, maybe not 5 years' time, maybe in 20 years' time, we laugh about the old days where we used to have to get in and sit in the driver's seat and hold onto a steering wheel. It might be the point of, I know Jimmy around the corner, he can still drive a car, but it might be the mainstream process
But
where you
what about
don't.
the driving instructors? Will they be out of date? There'll be no more driving instructors.
Yeah, I think they've got a job for a little while to go yet, but we'll get to that point, presumably, where we don't need the skills that we've got in terms of driving, so we probably don't need driving instructors. Again, we're talking a long way down the track for
I don't
that.
think it's that far down the track.
Yeah.
The way that we've seen EVs, autonomous cars as well, progress in the last 5 years, and now Volvo said anything after, 5 years from now, no, it's all automatic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, how many people do you know that are able to pull apart a watch and be a Swiss watchmaker, for example? We
Don't
just
you
buy
touch my Rolex.
Rolexes. We just get to that point where we throw away the watches and buy the new technology. So there are skills being lost all the time.
So look out, driving instructors, upskill to another level of something, or you'll be out of a job. Matthew Dickinson, I think it was all right to talk to you, wasn't it?
My pleasure, Richard,
8
my
o'clock.
pleasure.